How's it going, Commanders? This is Feka, and I'm going to be going over the board game ScytheBorne. And here with us today, we're going to have Biggles, Whippy, Hohenheim, Muse, and a few others kind of bouncing in and out. And basically what it is the board game Scythe, but with all the Starborne assets I could find. So we're going to load this thing up, and I'm just going to go over the base of how exactly to play. It's going to basically be how to play Scythe, but for those of you that don't really know, and for those that I've been playing with in our community, I'm just going to put this up here to kind of put on the Steam URL, just to have a video up there. Now, the first thing we're going to do is, really set up the board, and that's seen by here. Ideally, you'll select one of these randomly and select a player randomly. As you can see, I've completely redone all the models and everything with, the characters are now people from Starborne, really showcasing a lot of the different Harveys that you've seen in some of the YouTube videos. And then each faction has their faction ship. I had a lot of fun making this, and like I've said, I've put it up on the Steam Workshop. I'll put the link in the description for anyone that likes board games. This is a fantastic one, but it's also quite in-depth. So for starters, start setting up the board. It goes as far as these are your Harveys, and Scythe are called workers. You have your mining colony, which is a mill in Scythe, your habitation dome, which is a monument in Scythe, your heavy ship assembly, and your Stargate, which is a mine. We'll go ahead and just set up these earlier ones. And what I really want to focus on for those, you'll probably get confused multiple times throughout this video as we go on, and I'll keep mentioning it, is just keep focusing on the fact that there's these 4 things to do, and kind of recognize these as 4 separate squares, where you have this move, bolster, trade, and produce. And then you also have connected to those are your different actions, that you pay for, as far as upgrade, deploy, build, and enlist. And the first one is move, and really move is about as simple as it gets, right? You can move 2 individual pieces each one time. So you kind of have your Harveys, and you kind of have, you'll see here your starting sectors, just like we have in Starborne. You can't actually leave your starting sectors unless you have a special ability. So moving your Harveys would just be, kind of as you would normally. And you can also move your characters. So something like moving your character out into the forefront. We'll get more into exactly what all these things are, but this is just kind of the overview of the first one. All right, so the second one, there's these things called credits in the game, or combat cards. This is kind of how combat works. What you'll do is, if it's in red, you pay that amount. And if it's down here, this is kind of what you gain. And then the same thing, you'll be able to build something down here. And if you take a turn, you put this marker on it, and that symbolizes, it won't come the correct way, but this symbolizes I've gone, and you can't use the same action more than once. So on your following turn, you can no longer use the action you used prior. This one is pay 1 platinum, and trade is gain 1 of any resource. Once again, this won't really matter much, and then produce is this 4th one. So you understand there's 4 different options you can do on your turn, and I'll go into more depth right now about what exactly these 4 are. So
on each 4, you can pick 1 of each, or you can do everything on the turn card.
You can do everything on the turn card. So you're going to pick 1 of each of these 4 cards every turn, but you can't choose the same one twice in a row.
So I can pick any of the 4 and do everything on that card?
Yes, if you're able to. If you're able to pay the amounts. Right? Anything in red is a pay. So, and you can even keep going back and forth on the same 2, right? You wouldn't have to do those, but you just can't do the same one twice in a row.
Am I assuming you pick starting location, or is that determined?
That's based off your faction.
Okay.
The board's always stagnant. It's not a randomized one, so it's always the same game. Factions. So now we'll get into exactly what we'll be doing here. Now these are Harveys, or workers. These are how you're going to get resources. All the resources in the game will be displayed on the board, so we won't have any mess over here. What happens is this 4th one called produce. When you produce, this is saying on 2 different tile locations you can produce resources. So in this case, this would be a labor node and an ice node. So you'll come grab labor, and you'll put it on the board when that produces, right? Same goes for if this was on metal, you take the metal and you'd put it on the board. And so this is now a piece with, so say if these were your 2 Harveys, you got 2 produces, you have to produce on 2 separate tiles, this is what you'd produce. Now these are the resources to how you use these bottom ones. So say if we were on gas and we got 2 gas nodes, we got 2 gas locations. If I went here to do this move, what we could do is we can move a Harvey. You can take any amount of resources with you when you move locations, because you have to have the resources in your location to use them. We could even, and then with our second move, we could do something like this. It's irrelevant, just kind of showing that you can do it. And then for the bottom half, since we did the first half, we used move. The bottom half, we can pay it to oil, or to gas, sorry. And sorry, I did not mean to pick that up. We'll pick up this 2 gas. We'll put it back away. And we'll do this thing. And this is called upgrade. Now, when you upgrade, it's taking one of these 6 cubes, called technology cubes, and moving it to the bottom of the board. Now, what this does is when you pick it up, you see it reveals a new thing. That's giving you a 3rd move on your turn. And you can come down on one of these blocks and reduce the overall cost of this action. So you're upgrading twice by saying, like, I'm getting a better top part of your card. And you can go to any of these bottom ones. It doesn't have to be to the same one. And you're reducing the cost down here. So now this will forever only cost 3 metal instead of 4 metal. And you'll get 3 moves on this. That's what the overall upgrade is. Does everyone kind of get that basic idea?
I get the basics idea.
Okay. That's all we need to work with. Once we get basics, we'll just kind of play. And then the game gets a lot simpler from there. So
I'm loading up table now.
What's the objective of the game? Like, what am I trying to do to win? And
perfect.
what am I not trying to do to lose?
So in order to win the game, it's based off of how many points you have, or I guess in the end, everything's calculated into platinum. There's quite a series tier of winning. It is based around these stars here. You gain these stars for several different things. Once one player in the game gets 6 stars, all points are calculated, and whoever has the most points wins the game. You get points through all of these things here, and I'll explain these symbols here. One of them, this first one here, is doing all 6 of your upgrades. So if you notice, you had 6 cubes here. If you managed to move them all down and did all 6 of your upgrades, at that point, you get a star. You'll pick up one of your stars, and you'll move it here saying, hey, I got a star for 6 upgrades. This will be tracked, and everyone will kind of watch this. Like I said, if one person gets 6, the game will be over. Once the game's over, we look and we get points, and we'll just kind of use this first tier of points just for an example. For every star a player has, they'll get 3 points. For every territory they own, they'll get 2 points. And for every 2 resources on the board, like this would count as 2. This would even count as 2, 1, 2. You'll get 1 point.
So my only other question is there player elimination?
No. And you'll see why. So every time you lose a combat, and combat is kind of it's not as often as you'd expect in other games. Every time you lose combat, you don't actually lose anything. You just come back to your home base. Everything will just spawn back here. The resources stay on the tile. Whoever owns the tile gets those resources. But yeah, so yep.
Mentioning that based on your popularity,
Mm-hmm.
you have different multipliers for each of these 3 categories.
Yeah. That's what this tracker is here. And we'll call it favoritism for obvious reasons for some people. So if you actually get into this higher tier, so if you have 1 to 6 favoritism or popularity, you'll get these points. If you have this many, you'll get this many points. So it's a measurement that's kind of like exponential a little bit.
So where's the pay to win factor, Fecker?
All right, so this is how you get platinum. And that's what this will be called, platinum. So, and also if you Venmo me $1, I'll start you off higher on any of these tracks. So, all right.
What's the password to this?
FAB lowercase. So that's the move, and that's how you pay. That will be ultimately how we win. Is we'll go through a tiered point system. The main goal basically is just, I guess, kind of knocking some of these out, getting as many resources, trying to get as much territory before the game ends. That's kind of where these buildings come in. This third one over here, this is you pay 1 platinum. Your platinum will be located in your bag down here. You can either get 2 favoritism or trade for 2 goods, and that's just you can bring any 2 resources from here and just put them on the board on a location you own. That's what trade will do.
I'm in the game now. It looks really cool, actually.
Thanks. And so you'll pay 2 crystal, and you get to build any of these 4 outposts or buildings.
Move the camera with the keyboard.
Right.
Like a real quick question.
Yep.
Do you? I know you ported this into Starborne stuff. Do rivers exist in this?
Yes. So those we'll actually do that right now. Right after I go through buildings, and then I'll go straight into that. That's a very good question because that's the only one that's not immediately like the exact same thing. So in order to build a building, you pay the 2 crystal, and you can build any of these 4 buildings. By doing so, you unlock like the thing below it. So say if I were to build this armory, you can build it anywhere on that you own that you have a Harvey at, and it unlocks this. So next time you trade, you also will gain a credit, and I'll explain kind of what credits are down the line too. But like, so it's just unlocking the ability to do that. The mill or the mining colony will gain you 1 extra resource. So if I were to produce here, it'd be 1 plus my mining colony, so I'd actually gain 2 labor that time instead of just 1. Same thing, if you complete all 4 buildings, you'll get a star. If you complete all 4 of your ships, that's what this second one is deploying a ship. You put this on the board, and that's kind of like one of the ways of fighting. We'll kind of get into fighting also.
How
Yep.
does ship production work, or is that dependent on faction?
That's just right here. So when you pay however much metal is required, you'll get a mech, or in this case, ship. And that's just what this deploy means. So there's the 4 moves up here are move, bolster, trade, produce, and the 4 down here are upgrade, deploy, build, enlist. Enlist is a little bit complicated, so I'm just going to stick to these 3 for now. But
Alright.
so this is how you build outposts, this is how you build your ships, and this is how you upgrade to make things cheaper. Now, for movement restrictions, as far as how the game actually, you kind of move around, I'll move this back just so we get a clear picture. Now, if you want to move, you'll actually notice these kind of symbols in the middle of your hexes. These are called your sectors. Your Harveys actually cannot leave your sector at any point really in the game. In order to leave your sector, you need to unlock the ability to do so. One of the ways of doing that is building one of your mechs. And every time you build a mech, you unlock the ability that's under it. And this is called move across rivers. Every time you see the word river, it means sector. Move across sectors to farms and tundras. If you hover over any of the things, it tells you what like the actual official name is. But a tundra is the gas node. So in which point, this unlocks the ability for mechs they can carry unlimited amount of Harveys, stuff like that, across sector lines. So that's like kind of like your starting area. This is your starting sector. And you can only leave by means of really unlocking this or by using stargates. And we'll kind of explain. That's what this symbol is here. Every stargate in the game is connected. So this, that was 1 move. This is 1 move. But also this is 1 move because it's connected by 2 stargates. So Hohenheim, that's where you kind of ask. The river, if you actually look at it, every river is really just blocking off 3 hexes. And by acknowledging that, I kind of just replaced it with sectors.
Okay, so it's just you can't leave your sector unless you meet your criteria.
Yes. Yeah.
Or if you have like your own
Stargate.
warp.
Yeah. So that's one of the buildings over here at the bottom left. If you're actually to build this building, you could put it here without the mech or without the ship. You could actually then, this Harvey now has access to every Stargate.
Gotcha. Which also, so I guess the flip side means that you can't go into another person's zone unless you are going through your specific entry.
Going through, your requirements. So the fact that right now, as MPL, I can only go.
You can't leave or enter a
sector.
A sector unless you are doing it through your specific path.
Yes, and once you get into the sector, you can move freely, just like you can with the river system in the actual game. But it's just getting into and out of sectors. You need to make sure you meet the requirement. So once again, if you guys get overwhelmed at any point, which you definitely will, just keep referring to these 4 things, and I just have to do one of these 4 things and my turn will be over, right? You don't have to consider all this craziness. The scoring will get a little bit complicated and stuff like that, but that's just as we play, it'll get more comfortable.
So the other question is the Dyson sphere. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's we will definitely get to that. Let me do combat real quick, just so we have a basic understanding of that, and that kind of unlocks the other two resources we're going to talk about.
All right. Well, I also have a real question.
Yep.
Quick. So earlier you talked about like building the ice node or the metal node to produce the resources, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you build multiple of those on the same square, and can someone else build on the same one that you've already built on?
Perfect question. Outposts are 1 per hex, no matter what. So, and you only have one of each also, right? So if you have the mining colony, you could put that here on the metal thing, right? At any point, you'll produce an additional metal. You cannot at that point also put a Stargate here. And your enemies also can't either. Now, the other interesting thing is, say if you have the Stargate here, and say if, Zayok comes over and beats me, which would retreat my ships, the resources stay here, the outpost also stays here, and the outpost is always usable by you still. So what that means is if you have a frigate over here on the Stargate, you can now still use your own Stargate to come back and fight him because it's still online. The outpost will never go offline. The same thing with the mining colony. It wouldn't make much sense, but with the armory or something like that, say if this was off, the habitation dome, which is the monument, means every time you bolster, you also gain a favoritism. So you would still gain that. So you still gain all the benefits of that. You can't overlap them, and your enemy also can't build one here. Does that answer all those kind of?
Yes. And I have one more question.
Yep.
As you build your favoritism or popularity or whatever, what is the actual modifier for how much coin stuff are worth? Like, what does it go up? Because earlier you said there was a modifier.
Yep, right here. So these it's gonna be 3 tiers. If you're at 6 favoritism, every star will be worth 3 platinum, and a platinum is a point. If you're at 7, every star will be worth 4. If you get up to 13, it'll be worth 5, and so on for each of these 3 things. So you'll see like how many it is. And we'll continuously go over the point scoring system, so we're all completely aware. It'll be a little bit of a challenge there.
Does Feka start at max favoritism because of the development team?
Yeah. I start out at 18, and that's just how it's gonna go. Okay. So we'll go on to combat now. So if, say, we'll just do something like this. He's there, I'm here, and I'm like, I want that spot. Like, I really need a gas node. I don't have it in my home sector. I want it, right? So combat's always started just by ending your movement on an enemy. If you actually go through an enemy, you cannot actually pass through. If I had 2 movements per se, every time you enter a hex with an enemy, you have to stop, and you have to do the engagement after all your movements are done. So if I saw the second movement, I would just do that real quick, and then we'd go into fighting. Now, for fighting, you've been noticing there's these things called credits the whole time. These C, as you'll see a lot throughout the game. That is measured down here on this board. You can have a maximum 16. And every time you go into combat, your combat strength is decided by how many credits you want to pay, up to a maximum of 7. So for starting off this fight, that is me, yellow, going against red. I have 5 credits. He only has 3. I could then, you go over to your cards over here. They're labeled with your faction name. If you were to actually search in them, it has each of the values up to 7. And I could then say I want to use up to 5. I would put my card face down. He'd put his card face down. And then there's one other part of it. So this is not just a 1-tier thing. Of course, so I've bet my 5. He'll bet his. And then there's also combat cards, which you've seen like this yellow marker kind of throughout it. These are up here, and these are an additional modifier. So you can use 1 per ship you have in combat. So let's just say I have one of these. So it'd be these 2 cards added up are my combat strength. He'll do the exact same thing. And then you'll both flip at the same time. Whoever has the most wins. On a tie, the attacker always wins. At which point, if he had any resources on this node, they stay. His ship flies back to his home base. And all is just back to normal. There's no negative, really. Now, the loser, if he were to at least bet 1 influence, or 1 credit, he will then get to draw a combat card. So there's a little bit of a bonus to losing. So it's not all bad. Also, any Harvey that was with him, or worker here, like these worker drones, that were on the location, I will lose a favoritism for, because I'm displacing the workers, and they go back and talk shit about me. So you'll actually lose 1 per Harvey that's there. If I were to bring him in, say while I was attacking, and I lose, he doesn't lose any favoritism because I'm bringing them with me. They're not being displaced. I brought them with me.
So it literally comes up It should actually come up. Hashtag Fecker's fault.
Yeah, exactly.
If you
It
attack
sounds
people, they're gonna go to
specifically,
political and talk
That's,
shit.
that sounds specifically like an ex-Gravity member right there.
Yeah. So then for the example, say if I were to bring 2 ships in, I still only get this to bet up to 7 credits, but I will get to use 2 of these cards if I have them. And so I could get a much higher number, as
So
you can
how
imagine.
many combat cards can you use per combat?
1 per ship you have.
Okay.
Or
So you-
character, right?
Or character. You have a character piece as well. He acts as a ship for combat purposes.
So if you outnumber in ships, does that change the combat outcome then, or is that how does that work?
If you have more ships than them,
Yeah. So say if I have 2 ships and I
Yeah.
bet three credits on each ship, right? That's allowed.
so you bet credits 1 time for the whole battle. So you'll bet 5, but then you can use these combat cards 1 per ship. So the real advantage is he can only use 1 of these cards. Now you may not have any of these cards, so it may not even be an advantage. But sometimes you'll have a bunch of them, and it's like, okay, I want to double up my ships and get kind of that edgy advantage.
Fair enough.
You do lose everything you've used, so you'll go back on the track. Yeah.
It is worth, as a general thing, to know that the maximum number of ships that you can assault with is 3, and the maximum amount of ships you could have on defense is 5. But that only increases how many cards you can add to the fight, which are only you know. But the most that you can add in terms of point defense is capped at 7 for each player.
Yeah.
So are there missile batteries in the game? Is you have a question?
no missile batteries. And then you'll see actually the total amount of each card in the deck over here on next to the deck. So you'll see there's only 6 5s, and they only range from 2 to 5. So it's not like some wild difference in numbers. They're pretty close. Most cards are about there. But yeah, holding on to a 5 and really being able to get over an edge on someone. Losing these credits doesn't always feel good, especially because you actually lose them. If you fall down, if I were to bet all 5 here and go down to 0, the rest of the board will be like, oh, all of his territories are pretty easy pickings now because I can just go fight him, and he can't bet any influence or any credits. Sorry,
risk reward kind of thing.
Yep.
I think that also the other thing you can know is that so ties go to the attacker.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times what people will do is they will put down 1 over the maximum of what a player could theoretically play, so that they'll put enough points, enough cards down, so that the most that someone could theoretically do is tie, which means they're guaranteed to win. Which is why attacking is a little more favored than defending, because you can basically go 1. You don't have to be 1 above what someone could theoretically do. You could just match them and you'll win.
Right. So a perfect example of that would be here. Say if I brought these 2 frigates in to fight this Corvette. Down here you see he only has a maximum of 3, and I know the highest possible card he could play is a 5, so I know his highest potential combat score would be an 8. Knowing that, I can just play these 2 cards in my hand and pull out 0 influence, and I know for a fact I have beaten him. Even with only playing 0 credits, because I know at max he could use his 3 credits and then a 5 card from his hand, because he only has 1 ship. So you can min-max thought like that. You don't know exactly what their cards are. You don't have knowledge of, he has a 5 in his hand or a 3 in his hand. You know how many cards he has, but you don't know what exactly they are. So that's how the whole basis of combat will work. It's really beneficial if you want to get a bunch of resources that someone has or anything like that. The next part would be how you get more Harveys. We'll go through that real quick. If you
it's probably going to be one of those things because I learn better by playing.
Yep.
By
I totally understand that, and so that's why we'll just go through. I'm just going to try to get through the basics of it, and then we'll work through it. Since it's a turn game, we can sit here and watch each person individually and help them through it. I just getting the bare necessities down is going to be pretty crucial, though.
Yeah, Whippy, I'm right there with you. The only reason I'm adding these things in is because I just got my butt kicked playing against the AI on the computer yesterday. Like,
it's cool. All right.
Fun fact: they will never attack you unless they have enough to perfectly.
yes.
Your maximum.
It's like they have computer efficiency.
Yeah.
Almost like that.
So what we have now is, so this is the other one. So an ice node gives you labor, a metal node gives you metal, gas node gives you gas, crystal node gives you crystal. All those are here, right? The station, on the other hand, are where Harveys go to create more Harveys. For every Harvey there, just like if I had 2 Harveys here, I'd produce 2 ice. If I have 2 Harveys here, I'll produce 2 more Harveys. And what that looks like is you take them from here, from these blocks up here. I can take 2 of them, and I bring them here to the place. If I had 1, I'd produce 1, right? Now, the positive to this is clearly next time I go to use my produce, that's basically, at least 2 times more effective. And especially if I remove them here, now I'm producing 4 ice, right? And there's no cap to that. The negative to that is the more Harveys I build, the more the cost of producing it. So now every time I produce, I have to also spend a credit, which would take this track down.
So there's definite trade-offs to it.
Yes.
You can't just scale like a mofo.
Yeah,
can you?
there's always risk and reward.
So there's 8 total Harveys. If you get all 8 total Harveys out, you will also get a star. So that's something, and that's right here. That really good image.
So you want to be in a position where you can't be attacked then, if you'd have a way out.
Yeah,
Just
for
the
sure.
credit.
And then these are the other things you have to pay. So it's every 2, the cost goes up. It actually costs a favoritism every time you use it once you get to 6 out. And it'll cost also a platinum. So it'll cost a credit, a favoritism, and a platinum if you are doing it here at the end. Like if you have 8 out. And even if you're not using all 8 to produce, you're still paying all that just to produce.
I think I've got the bare necessities down, but it's still going to be a
For sure.
matter of, what the fuck am I doing?
Oh, without a doubt, man. And that's to be expected, and we'll all go through it, and we'll all do this together. One last one before we start. I will have to go over and list real quick, and I'll have to go over why you have a character here. Now, why you have a character here, like I said before, this is exactly like a ship in terms of combat, so it's a little bit of extra protection at the very beginning of the game. He also cannot leave the sector. No one can actually leave your sector unless there's an additional ability like the Stargate or the ship ability. This ship ability only applies to the ship and the character, so Harveys do not gain this river crossing. Characters cannot move Harveys like a ship can. He's kind of on his own. And then there's one more ability. You see these cards here. These are challenges. Your character, by landing on a location with a challenge, will activate the challenge. You'll take this off the board, and you'll actually read one of these challenges out loud. And you just pick one of these 3 things. So it's like gain 2 money and 1 popularity, pay 3 to gain 1 upgrade, pay 2 popularity gain. So you're just choosing one of these 3 things. It normally goes like, low risk, medium, high for how much you're getting and how much you have to pay.
So if we have any roleplay cards, are we going to say we have to roleplay it?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and roleplay that. Make sure you read it out loud. Tell them if you're helping an adventure stall heavy gear, you're stealing the adventure's fuel source. And they go pretty well. So these I have not converted yet. There's 38 of them, and they're pretty detailed. So what I've done instead is add this conversion reference sheet at the top of your board. It has all the conversions. And you can flip it and see every time it's a word you don't understand, you can flip on one of these 2 sides, and they're kind of labeled and saying, oh, a mountain is a metal field, or oh, a tundra is a gas field.
Where's the cosmetic selection, the claim painters and the avatars? Where's that?
Once again, Venmo me a few bucks. I'll add it to your character, and we'll be good to go. Now, this last build that I've been kind of staying away from is just a little bit complicated. If you were to pay 2 labor, you can enlist someone's help. You're just enlisting, I guess, troops or soldiers, right? You would pick up any of these 4 bottom yellow pieces, and you put them on one of these 4 up here. You can go from any which direction, right? What this means is, now that I've unveiled this, anytime the person to my left or the person to my right deploys a ship, I will get a platinum. This is just an extra additional bonus. It's an ongoing recruitment bonus that it kind of just is there. That's just what it's going to do. And when you come up here, you get a one-time signing bonus of one of these 4 things. So if I put it here, I'll gain 2 favoritism on the board. Say if I were to enlist again, and say I just take, I don't know, like this one, I can put this up here. I can be like, all right, I gain 2 platinum immediately. And then anytime I or any of the person to my left or right build something, I will gain a favoritism. And that's what enlist does. That one's a little bit more complicated, and we'll definitely go over that 100 more times.
That definitely seems like an interesting mechanic. That's big risk, big reward.
Yes. So
I thought it was if they use the card at all, not if they use the pay.
if they use, it has to be if they use the pay.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. At any point, I have put a full rule book in front of every player mat. I'm more than happy to be wrong about anything. It's there for you to go through. Please.
How do I scroll through the book?
You right click and you go to state, and you can go through any of the states. That's the pages.
That's actually pretty clever.
Oh,
So-
do I have to actually be okay? I think I have to be a character.
Yeah, you can pick a color, and you can do that.
The only other question is, why am I stuck on 97% loading?
So, yeah.
Becca, you should make like a rule book separate that like spectators and stuff can use too. So
I-
that we can be like going through it and be like, "Ha, Becca, you're wrong."
There's also a PDF version I can just link you. But once again, I'd be more than happy to be wrong, just so we all know the rules better. I have
Okay,
no.
I have another question.
Yep.
How long on average are the games?
4 hours, apparently.
So
It depends on it heavily depends on how familiar people are with the game.
you'll see in the beginning, I'll be taking turns incredibly fast, and everyone else will have to go through a lot of things. When I play on my own on the computer version, it's a very unrealistic number, but I can finish a game in 30 minutes because it's just me. The box says 2 hours. Last time we played, it took about 4 hours. And then at that point, instead of waiting for someone to get to 6 stars, we can just call the game and say, hey guys, we're going to start counting the points now.
Okay, I mean I have all day to play. I just
Yep.
wanted to know.
Totally worth knowing. So at this point, I'm going to stop recording my tutorial video. You guys, we'll go ahead and pick our, down here, we can randomly select our people, and we're good to go. Actually, before we go, I just remember there's one more thing. Here, kind of in the middle, actually directly in the middle, is the Dyson Sphere. And this is something that's very common and a popular thing in Starborne. And what actually happens is, with this, the first time you actually get your character to the Dyson Sphere during the match, you will flip over the Dyson Sphere cards that are here. There will actually be a total of 1 plus the amount of people playing. So right now we have like 5 people playing. So we'll get 6 cards out. And if you get there, you get to look at all these cards, and you can kind of just search through them. They all have special abilities. It actually goes into this 5th slot down here. So you'll actually end up with a player mat with these 4 options, and then a 5th one. So these end up being pretty powerful abilities. This bottom thing actually means move the same piece twice, which you can't do in any other situation. So they can be pretty good. As you take them, say if we were to take this one, the next person to get there, even if we leave, if we get defeated, we keep this. And the next person that gets here will get to pick between the remaining 5 until it gets down to none. And then there's actually 2 more ways of scoring. There's actually, when you start the game, you're going to pull 2 of these secret objectives, as you say. So each person would grab 2 of these. You can kind of read them. So it'd be something like build at least 3 structures, have at least 7 popularity, and 0 mechs. If you're, once again, not understanding these, the conversions are here in these sheets that you can flip over. So you'll grab these and you'll put them down here, and these are actually hidden areas. I'm not yellow right now, I'm white, so I can't see them if I put them in the yellow area, but if I were to put them in the white area, you do this. And then I call them the mechanisms, but it's going to be these, and you roll this dice at the beginning of a game, and whatever number it rolls on, so in this case 2, you'd come here, and I consider everywhere next to a Stargate is what this is kind of saying, counts as a mechanism. And if you get if you get your structures touching 6 independent Stargates, so that's actually all of them on the board, you will earn 9 points. So those are just 2 more ways of getting points to add here to the objectives board. So happy playing, Commanders.